areas, but those temperatures are going to be lower and it will feel colder because that northerly wind will be stronger.
Edward Enninful is the editor-in-chief of British Vogue and the European editorial director for Vogue. He left Ghana as a teenage asylum seeker and says he wants to use his platform to modernise the fashion and media industries.
Amol Rajan meets Edward Enninful in the Arts Interviews. Watch on BBC iPlayer.
People are travelling again, heading back out on the road and rediscovering their wanderlust.
Exploring new destinations and cultures, making fresh friends and creating memories that will last a lifetime.
That's why at the travel show, we're expanding our horizons too. And wherever we go,
we want you to come with us. Now that might make for an awful lot of excess baggage, but we think you're worth it.
The Travel Show, Saturday at 10:30 on the BBC News Channel.
Today at 6, the Bank of England raises interest rates to their highest level for 14 years. They've gone up by 0.5% to 2.25%, taking borrowing costs to the highest level since 2008. It comes as the Bank of England says the UK is probably already in recession. Also on the programme, more money for social care in England to help free up NHS beds, but critics say it's just tinkering around the edges. Free at last, the British nationals held by Russian forces in Ukraine are flown home.
We just want to let everyone know that we're now out of the danger zone and we're on our way home to our families.
And launching the Sea Monster, the latest project in a festival of creativity across the UK, costing the taxpayer £120 million. Is it worth it?
And coming up on the BBC News Channel, football disorder in England and Wales reaches an 8-year high, with over 2,000 football-related arrests last season.
Good evening. Interest rates have risen to their highest level for 14 years, heaping extra costs on mortgage holders, credit card users and businesses. The Governor of the Bank of England warned that the UK economy may already be in recession. Rates have risen by 0.5% today, the 7th hike in a row, as the bank tries to curb inflation. Interest rates now stand at 2.25%. Our economics editor Faisal Islam has the details.
For nearly a decade and a half, British interest rates have been extremely low. For the homeowners, high street businesses and corporations that have become used to very low base interest rates, this is now at an end. In Nantwich in Cheshire, the ice cream farm has benefited from investing millions at low interest rates.
It's always encouraged investment because it's always been at a low, through this period of investment that we've had.
This food tourism business is now having to adjust at a time when consumers have little spare cash and costs are rocketing.
Wherever the base rate goes, obviously our business goes, and it can be hugely drastic to it. It could actually finish the business depending how far it gets, and I think everybody's in that same situation.
So the Bank of England today have once again put up rates, another 0.5 percentage point to 2.25%. It's back up to levels not seen since 2008, affecting the price of loans across the economy. It is now a decisive break with an era of extremely low rates that had lasted since the financial crisis and was prolonged by the pandemic. The bank wants to put a lid on rising prices by slowing the economy with these rate rises. But inflation is still set to remain above 10% for some months, and rates nearly went up by even more today.
And that's the challenge. The bank now believes that we're already in a recession that began in April, and yet it is increasing the cost of borrowing in a way that could make that recession worse. Why? because inflation is super high, and even with the tempering of the gas and energy prices by the government, that could remain so. So the question is, how high will rates go? Certainly to 3%, but 4 or even 5% are not out of the question.
The Bank of England probably started too late in raising interest rates. They left the first rise until December and were quite slow, and have been quite slow in raising them since then. So we're not actually getting much downward pressure on inflation at the moment from interest rate changes.
On the screens of this broker in St Albans, the impact of all of this already hitting the mortgage market.
One lender's service levels went up to, I think it was 40 working days to get an offer out. Now, to get a mortgage offer out is normally around 10 to 15 working days. Rates are changing on a daily basis. Lenders are pulling products on a daily basis. If you give a rate today, you don't know if it will be gone tomorrow.
And when the mortgage market is affected, then so is the housing market. It is inevitable when rates go up like this.
Faisal is with me now. It's a real balancing act, this, isn't it?
Yes, it's a balancing act, as we've been hearing, on interest rates for the Bank of England. It's also a balancing act for the government, and it's actually a balancing act between the Bank of England and the government as well. So tomorrow we will get a series of policies from the government aimed to try and boost growth. And in fact, we've got a pretty big one today ahead of the announcements that we expect tomorrow morning. It was about the national insurance rise, which we got only in April. That is being reversed in total. 1.25% rise, both for employees and employers. National insurance. That is being reversed in November. That's a pretty hefty tax cut compared to where we are now. Obviously not compared to where we were a year ago. It's worth several £1,000s on average to 900,000 employers, and about £300 on average for 28 million workers. So that's skewed towards higher earners. The money for that, it's a significant amount of money, I think upwards of £14 billion, will be borrowed because the money it raised is still going into the NHS. And so that has raised some concerns about whether all of the kind of economic numbers are working out. We've seen in the markets today, sterling's been pretty stable, but the borrowing costs for the British government, partly as a result of what we're seeing from the Bank of England, have gone up. You don't want that the day before a big announcement on tax and spend.
Faisal Islam, thank you. Well, you can get plenty more information on today's rates rise on BBC News Online. That's bbc.co.uk/news, or you can also use the BBC News app. The RMT union has announced another rail strike, the third date announced at the start of October. Its 40,000 members working for Network Rail will walk out on Saturday, October the 8th. The move comes after the ASLEF union said its members at 13 train operating companies would strike on Saturday the 1st and Wednesday the 5th of October. The new Health Secretary, Therese Coffee, has set out her plans to improve access to the NHS and social care in England. She said there was too much variation in the care people receive across the country. Therese Coffee announced a £500 million social care discharge fund for the winter to help free up beds in hospitals. She acknowledged that there was a shortage of carers and promised £15 million to help employ more workers from abroad. And she said pension rules would be changed to try to stop doctors from leaving the profession. But Labour accused the government of still having no plan to meet the scale of the challenge, while a union representing doctors said the government was just tinkering around the edges. Our health editor, Hugh Pym, reports.
One gentleman waiting over 38 hours.
Is waiting for an increased package of care.
Hopefully home today.
We are predicted 62 today.
It's 8 o'clock, the first bed meeting of the day. With patients stuck waiting in A&E, they have to find beds and get those who are medically fit back home.
What we'll try and do now is we're opening frailty assessment, so we know 3 patients of the highest length of time waiting in the department will be moving out straight away. We can manage to bypass the emergency department.
The frailty assessment unit frees space in A&E.
Good morning, Julia.
First patient in is Julia. She's 94.
I seem to have gone downhill rapidly.
The unit aims to fast-track elderly patients straight to the correct specialist consultants. On the ward, big decisions on who's well enough to leave the hospital.
We've put him down as a home today. We just need to make sure the care's in place.
There are 3 patients who are medically fit to go home.
If that happens, then she will be going today.
If social care and transport can be booked, that's 3 free beds on this ward.
Happy birthday, dear Terry.
Terry is 90 today. He needs an ambulance to get home and then a specialist carer to administer medication.
So we think we can get you out today.
Oh, no.
So Emily's going to phone the carers.
Over on the orthopaedic ward is Marjorie.
We're from Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service. We've come to take you home.
Although medically fit to go home, it's taken over 2 weeks to arrange appropriate care for her.
I've been here for 3 weeks, but I've enjoyed it. I've been spoilt to death.
Draw on gently down.
A lift was easier to organise. An initiative with the Fire and Rescue Service involves transporting patients and checking how safe their home is.
Hello everyone.
With another bed free, Rachel has the lunchtime update. How are you off for beds at the moment?
So at the moment we're minus 44 beds. It is tricky. As we can see, we've got 12 patients waiting in the emergency department waiting for a bed. So every discharge counts today.
It's nearly lunchtime. Julia has been assessed and doctors decide she needs to stay.
She's got full package of care, but the daughter's raised some concerns.
Sadly, Julia has since passed away. Her family gave permission for us to include her.
We do have an ageing population, so throughout the country. And also COVID's led to quite a lot of people becoming frailer.
It's September and the hospital's nearly full. In fact, it's been like that for several weeks now. Currently, there are 60 patients in this hospital who are medically fit to leave, but because their home care package isn't in place, they can't be discharged.
The key to treating patients quickly at the front door and releasing ambulances into the community is flow through the hospital.
It's just gone 4.
In theory, we are now at a break even, so we can bed everything that we are predicted to take.
A request to take up to 2 extra ambulances per hour is expected. Back on the ward, it's home time for Terry.
It's in time for your birthday. I'm 21 again.
With Terry on his way, another bed is free. There's no flex in the system. With each day that passes, every bed counts, and winter is looming. Hugh Pym, BBC News, Warwick.
So freeing up beds in hospitals by tackling issues in social care is one of the big problems that needs solving in the NHS. Our social affairs editor Alison Holt has been meeting carers in the Peak District to hear about the challenges that they face.
You have to remind me, Harry, to go and get some fuel in because I'm nearly out.
This is the Hope Valley in the Derbyshire Peak District. Beautiful, but in places remote. Care workers like Suzanne and Harry drive many miles each week to support people in their own homes.
It cost me £60 last week to fill up my tank.
Are you kidding me? Oh.
Care staff here get £10.60 an hour, then extra money for petrol. But with rising prices, they just can't compete with other employers like supermarkets. Staff shortages are acute in a job where they have to reach their clients, whatever the weather, day and night.
If I had 10, 15, 20 more carers, I could give them a job and take the pressure off the local authority and provide care packages for these people that are stuck in hospital waiting.
How desperate are people for care?
Absolutely desperate. I've had people on the phone that have rung us direct in tears.
In a place like this, you see all the pressures on the care system coming together. There is huge demand. People want to be looked after in their own home, but they simply can't find the staff to meet that demand.
It's estimated there are currently 165,000 vacancies in care in England alone. Many who work in the sector say the £500 million announced for social care today will help through winter, but it doesn't tackle more deep-rooted problems. Yet this support is vital for people like Vernon, who needs 4 visits a day.
Would you like a trifle to go with it?
How important are the visits?
You want to spend a night on your own in bed, and you can't sleep. You're waiting for that door to go, knowing it's them coming in. Theirs is. Not an easy job they do, you know. You have to clean an old man like me down and clean him and wash him and put him back together again. You know, they deserve good money.
Sorry.
This care company is part of a larger group looking after about 1,000 people across England. The government says more money is on its way, and the boss here wants to know when it'll arrive.
If we invest immediately in social care, allied to a strategy for social care and older people in particular, then we have a pathway to a brighter future, especially for those people who need that support in the community.
And ensuring many more people want to work in care will be essential for that future. Alison Holt, BBC News.
Our health editor, Hugh Pym, is with me now. So the Prime Minister said that the NHS is one of her main priorities. How much of the plans that have been unveiled today are going to help?
Well, Sophie, health organisations, think tanks and so on are saying the intentions set out by Therese Coffee are welcome, but they don't really go nearly far enough, and there's not nearly enough detail. This £500 million fund to help move patients out of hospitals into social care is really restoring something that was there till the beginning of this year and throughout the pandemic. And it's funded not by new money, but by savings elsewhere. We need to know a little bit more about that. Doctors' pensions reforms there are intended to stop doctors retiring early because of tax burdens. They will take time to actually implement. And remember, winter is fast approaching. It'll bring intense pressure. Very few of these measures will address this winter. And of course, this government's had several years before now to try to tackle these problems.
Thank you. The time is very nearly 6:15. Our top story this evening. The Bank of England raises interest rates to 2.25%, their highest level for 14 years. And the ban is lifted on fracking in England. But can the controversial process of extracting shale gas help ease the soaring cost of energy?
Coming up in Sports Day on the BBC News channel. As Surrey seal the county championship, a major review of English cricket has been proposed aimed at improving the success of the England men's team.
Five British men who were captured by Russian-backed forces in Ukraine have arrived back in the UK after they were suddenly released. Aidan Aslin, Sean Pinner, John Harding and Andrew Hill had been fighting with Ukrainian armed forces when they were detained. Another man, Dylan Healy, had been providing humanitarian assistance. They were released last night as part of a prisoner exchange between Russia and Ukraine. Emma Vardy has this report.
We just want to let everyone know that we're now out of the danger zone and we're on our way home to our families.
A ticket home after months as prisoners.
Thanks to everyone that's been supporting us and whatnot, so it's really muchly appreciated.
The men arrived back at Heathrow this morning and were met by their families. For Aidan Aslin, it meant a long-awaited reunion with his Ukrainian fiancée, which she called a miracle.
If you're watching this, it means that we've surrendered.
Aidan Aslin and Sean Pinner had been held by Russian-backed separatists since they were captured in April. They'd both moved to Ukraine 4 years ago and joined the Ukrainian armed forces and had been helping to defend the country during the Russian invasion. But they were accused of being mercenaries and told they faced the death penalty. Liz Truss called it a sham trial in a kangaroo court. They'd been held alongside 3 other British men, John Harding, Andrew Hill and Dylan Healy, who were also released today. Last night, the Saudi government confirmed it had been involved in negotiations to secure their freedom as they arrived in Riyadh before heading back to the UK. But the treatment of the men at the hands of Russian separatists has been widely condemned.
He has been through months and months of terrible treatment. You can only imagine what that's meant for his family back home in Newark. It really has been a terrible ordeal for them, not knowing whether they were going to get Aidan home or whether, God forbid, the worst would happen to him.
Aidan Aslin arrived back here in his hometown of Newark this afternoon. His sudden release had come as a surprise to many people here that know him. His family have told me that at times they'd worried they may never see him alive again. Aidan's mother, Angela Wood, told the BBC the way her son had been treated was inhumane. During their months of captivity, the men had been shown on Russian TV as part of propaganda efforts by the Kremlin and had been told that the death penalty by firing squad would be carried out. Their surprise release came as part of a larger prisoner exchange between Ukraine and Russia.
Thank you very much.
The smiles hiding the full extent of what they endured. Emma Vardy, BBC News, Newark.
Well, Russia's conduct in Ukraine has been strongly condemned at a special meeting of the UN Security Council. The US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, said President Putin had shown contempt for international law and the world must not let him get away with it. His comments came as the Ukrainian military continues to make gains in the east of the country. Our senior international correspondent Ola Girin reports now from the newly liberated city of Kupiansk.
This is Kupiansk, a shattered city. Ukraine calls it liberated territory. During our visit, it doesn't sound that way. Every few minutes, more shelling. And it's soon very clear that war isn't far away.
Well, we've just had to run and take cover in the building. There's been what sounded like heavy incoming fire. It's pretty clear that the Russians are continuing to target Kupiansk, even though they've been pushed out.
Dangerous.
Understood. They want us away from the gas. Yeah.
A few minutes ago, we heard that the Russian helicopters doing some shelling, and it was nearby us. So we need to go to save your life and going from there, this city.
Is this happening a lot in Kupiansk? A lot of attacks?
Yes. Every day, Kupiansk under Russian shellings and Russian artillery. Quickly.
There's little sign of life now, but this is a big loss for the Russians. Some here don't criticize their former occupiers. They treated people normally, Alexander tells me. There was no torture, nothing like that. For us, it was no different with them or without them. They were here, but it feels like they weren't. They came and then they left. Others may have a different view. Either way, the shelling doesn't discriminate. I ask Lilia how she copes.
Ничего.
I do nothing, she says. I stay home and pray that nothing hits the house. Ukraine's victory here is messy and incomplete, and some believe the Russians will be back. Orla Girin, BBC News, Kupiansk.
The government has lifted the ban on fracking in England, the controversial process of extracting shale gas from rocks by breaking them up. A moratorium on fracking was put in place in 2019 following concerns over earth tremors. But as the energy crisis worsens in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the government says strengthening England's energy supply is an absolute priority. Scotland and Wales have no plans to lift their bans. In Northern Ireland, there is a proposal to ban fracking. Our climate editor, Justin Rolat, has more.
Blackpool is famous for its pleasure beach, its amusement arcades and its bracing sea air. But the fields beyond the town hold another valuable resource. There are reserves of natural gas trapped in the ancient shale rocks. Companies had begun fracking, pumping fluids down to fracture the rock and release the gas. But a wave of protests and a series of small earthquakes led to the procedure being banned in 2019. Today, the government said it would be lifting that ban.
It is important that we use all available sources of fuel within this country.
Vladimir Putin has weaponised energy, said Mr Rees-Mogg. The UK must do everything it can to ensure it has a secure supply, he said. This is a charter for earthquakes, responded Ed Miliband.
You can't escape a fossil fuels crisis by doubling down on fossil fuels. Renewables are today 9 times cheaper than gas.
But Britain's biggest private company says it is ready to exploit what it believes could be a vast resource.
Research says it could be dramatically large, it could be as big as the North Sea, but we don't know that until we can do the science, and that's what we're asking to do.
The government says the current rules on earthquakes are too strict and will be changed, but a new geological survey says there is still limited understanding of the risk, and that's not the only issue, say campaigners.
What we need to talk about is our energy use and demand. That means we need a nationwide programme insulating homes all over the UK to reduce our bills, but also for the climate. We don't need fracking, which will make the climate emergency even worse than it already is.
So here's the question: will fracking reduce your energy bills? And unfortunately, the answer is no. Companies will sell any gas they produce at market prices, and there won't be enough gas to significantly affect those. Justin Rolat, BBC News.
A 16-year-old boy has been arrested on suspicion of murder after a 15-year-old boy was stabbed to death outside a school in Huddersfield. The teenager, named locally as Kari McLean, was attacked on Wednesday afternoon close to North Huddersfield Trust School. He was taken to Leeds General Infirmary, where he died a short time later. There are more Catholics than Protestants in Northern Ireland for the first time since its creation a century ago. The latest census figures show 45.1% are Catholic and 43.5% are Protestant. Our correspondent Chris Page is in Belfast and talk us through the significance of this.
Well, Sophie, I suppose to understand the importance of this, you need to go back 101 years. That was, as you say, when most of the island of Ireland became independent from Britain and when Northern Ireland was founded. And back then, in 1921, it was thought that your religion was the best indicator of your politics, specifically your attitude towards the Union. So the borders of Northern Ireland were drawn to try to ensure there was a long-term Protestant majority to secure Northern Ireland's place in the UK. But things have changed. The census results published today show that 45.7% of people here are Catholics or were brought up as Catholics. The figure for Protestants is 43.5%. So people from a Catholic background are the biggest group for the first time ever. People were also asked about their national identity. 31.9% said they identified as British only. That's a drop compared with previous census figures. 29.1% said they were Irish only. It's worth noting that a significant number of people also identify as Northern Irish, and there's a rapidly growing group who say they do not belong to any religion at all. Nationalist politicians interpret these results by saying they point towards a trend that will eventually lead to a referendum on Irish unity. Unionists disagree. They say, for example, it is far from the case that all Catholics would support a united Ireland. It's certainly true that the link between religious background and politics is weaker than a century ago, but one way or another, these census results will play into the debate on Northern Ireland's future.
Chris, thank you. Now, it is called Unboxed, a celebration of creativity across the United Kingdom. This is Sea Monster in Weston-super-Mare, the latest free project to open to the public. The festival began in March and is costing the taxpayer £120 million. Now the head of an influential parliamentary committee says it's a potentially monumental waste of money and has called for the National Audit Office to investigate. Here's our culture editor, Katie Razzle.
Sea Monster looms over Weston-super-Mare, a decommissioned gas platform turned into an art installation about the environment.
No one really ever sees these structures close up, and I just was struck by the sheer scale of it.
Martin Green is giving me an exclusive tour of the delayed project, the latest from his Unboxed festival, which celebrates British creativity. But Unboxed has cost £120 million of taxpayers' money and is under fire. Have you felt under attack?
There's a healthy and natural cynicism to something new, something different. I know we're all very proud of it.
A festival to showcase Britain was initially announced in 2018 by the then Prime Minister Theresa May. 10 projects have been opening since March. Like this story of human life called About Us here in Carnarvon. Unboxed had an ambitious aim to reach 66 million people. Today, the chair of an influential parliamentary committee has written to the public spending watchdog, the National Audit Office, questioning how many visitors the festivals actually had and asking the NAO to investigate whether it's been value for money.
Well, we saw the warning signs, the red lights were flashing on the dashboard of this, and unfortunately it seems to be that we've been proven right by that. The fact is that this has been potentially a monumental waste of money and actually has made very little impact in the country as a whole. Ultimately, these decisions are signed off by politicians, so therefore politicians need to take the blame.
On the Western-super-Mare seafront, there's certainly interest in this evolving North Sea rig, and that's true around the country too, says Martin Green.
The government wanted to invest in creativity. The future of jobs and skills in this country is around creativity in the creative industries. We wanted to do things big and bold and ambitious, and that's what we've done, and I think that's absolutely value for money.
But there are people who are saying they haven't been extraordinary, they haven't been bold, nobody knows about Unboxed.
Well, you know, we've seen visitors in the millions. You can see behind you. I think this is extraordinary. I think it's bold. It's literally not been done in the world before.
Unboxed says it will publish official visitor numbers next month. Only then, perhaps, will we be able to judge its success or failure. Katie Razzle, BBC News, Western-super-Mare.
Time for a look at the weather now with Darren Bett. Hello.
Thank you very much, Sophie. It's quite warm today across southeastern parts of the UK with some sunshine. We saw temperatures of 20 or 21 degrees. But over the next few days, the temperatures are going to be falling and it's going to get particularly chilly at night starting this weekend. The cooler air, though, is coming in behind this band of cloud that's moving away from Scotland and Northern Ireland, heading further into England and Wales. And that, of course, is bringing some rain. It's been quite steady rain so far today. Some heavier bursts in there as well. But as the rain just sinks down towards the southeast, it becomes lighter and more patchy. Clearer skies in the north, away from those showers in northwest Scotland, means it's the northern half of the UK that will be chilly tonight. Temperatures could be 4 or 5 degrees perhaps. We've still got this cloud though and some patchy rain for much of the day, I think, across East Anglia and the southeast of England. Away from here though, some sunshine. A few showers. These look most likely to run into Scotland and Northern Ireland on a northwesterly breeze. And it's that northwesterly breeze that's bringing in this cooler air. So temperatures in many places will be a bit lower. Still could make 20 degrees though across southern parts of Wales. Heading into the start of the weekend, still a bit of rain not far away from Kent and Sussex. And this time we're going to find a few showers coming into England, perhaps into East Wales. Looks generally dry for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but those temperatures continuing to drop away. So maybe only 13 degrees, for example, in Newcastle. That weather front takes the rain away from the southeast. Around this area of high pressure, we're drawing in cooler air, but this is going to be significant. This big low here that's heading close to Iceland, that is going to pick up the winds across Northern Ireland and Scotland in particular during Sunday and bring some rain into the northwest later in the day. But away from here, it should be generally dry. There'll be some sunshine around, but again, it's on the chilly side. Temperatures around 15 or 16 degrees. Sophie.
Darren, thank you. And that's it from us. The news continues here on BBC One. It's time to join our colleagues across the nations and regions for the news where you are. Goodbye.